Today we are talking about patch 5.11, Life and Death. And what a patch. This is the release patch of Baron Samedi, and that definitely is the big positive point about this patch. As for the balance section, there are a lot of, I would say, questionable decisions to say the least. But let's begin with the good part, let's begin with the guard and then move on to the rest. We have a quick look at his wallpaper here. This is what it looks like. Some of you have probably already seen it. And then we get right into his kit. His passive is mostly known to you guys already. We kind of speculate about this. It's Hysteria. Baron shares Baron's Brew, a powerful restorative chalice with his allies from the item shop. That's the part you guys don't know about. Enemies hit by Baron will have Hysteria applied to them. Baron's abilities interact with Hysteria to provide bonus effects. Targets at max Hysteria take 25% additional damage from Baron Samedi. From everything. So Baron's Brew is 150 gold. It works like a chalice that has a 3-charge chalice style consumable, and it heals for 140 health and for 100 mana over 20 seconds. So this is very interesting as it's somewhat of a multi-pot, but as a chalice, only that it's half the price of other chalices. And I think this is gonna make many solo laners love having a Baron Samedi in middle lane, or somebody can play as a solo laner himself, but a very cheap multi-pot that can be bought along with another health chalice means you have a lot of free or very cheap sustain that way. And obviously for other roles, this is very beneficial as well. Like, I don't see much of a reason not to pick this up on anyone because it's both mana and health for a relatively low price. 150 gold really is just 3 pots. And it already comes with 3 charges, so why not pick it up? Interesting passive, I like it. It's a new cool mechanic. And then there's Hysteria. Baron applies 2 Hysteria per basic attack. Each ability applies a unique amount of Hysteria, and each of his abilities have a new effect on enemies with 30 Hysteria. All of his abilities deal more damage if the target has 70 or maximum Hysteria. As it says, targets at max Hysteria take 25% additional damage from Baron Samedi. I think this also refers to basic attacks, but either or, his biggest damage is not going to be basic attacks either way. And that brings us to his first ability, Vivid Gaze. Baron Samedi animates 2 scouts, both which briefly charge before firing beams of voodoo magic that damage enemies. The beam meet at a crossroads of Baron Samedi's choosing. Enemies hit by both beams take 15% damage from the second hit. If the enemy guard hit is above 30 Hysteria, their physical power, magical power, and attack speed are reduced. The projectile here is actually a cross, and you can kind of imagine it as a hybrid between Cerberus' Paralyzing Spit minus the mid projectile, it's just the projectiles on the side, and maybe Kali's Lash. Because you can cross the projectile very early, or you can cross it later, and you want to try and hit the enemy at the cross point, basically. Which I like as a mechanic, it's interesting, and the wind-up also gives you some time to move out of the ability. We'll see how easy it is to juke in reality, but it's a little bit of a charge-up beforehand. Damage goes up from 90 to 290, plus 60% scaling. So solid damage, I would say, though not absolutely crazy. Again, gets 15% extra damage from the second hit, though. The power reduction is 30%, the attack speed reduction is also 30%, both for magical and physical. So that kind of gives him the upper hand in boxing. Unfortunately, it doesn't tell us how long this lasts, and that kind of makes it hard to tell how good that debuff actually is. Hysteria per beam is 10, so up to 20. Not a lot compared to other abilities he has. Mana cost 55 to 75. Cooldown is 9 seconds. So you see this throughout his whole kit. His cooldowns are relatively short. This kit is pretty spammable. And that is because that way you can stack up the Hysteria. But yeah, his main damaging ability, which I think will also be a pretty solid clear, I would expect, is pretty good in that regard. And maybe it's not actually his damaging ability, because we have another one that could be his damaging ability too. And that is Consign Spirits. Baron Samedi guides restless spirits to the ground and buries them. After a brief delay, the ground erupts, damaging enemies standing in the area. If an enemy guard is hit, friendly spirits fly from the area and heal allies near the explosion or by Baron Samedi. So it can be near the enemy or near Baron Samedi apparently. If the enemy guard is above 30 Hysteria, the friendly spirit cleanses slows, making allies immune to slows and increase their movement speed. So the damage of this is 70 to 290 plus 70% scaling. This doesn't get any extra damage different from the cross. The flat heal value that you get here is 140 plus 10% of your magical power. And that's why I think this ability may actually be, next more often, because it's still a similar amount of damage most of the time, and it also has a heal on top. And then it has a flat health heal that scales depending on his missing health or the ally's missing health. I don't know why it's not explained more in the description here. I think it's up to 15%, unless it's 15% under a certain threshold. I didn't actually catch that on the patch notes, but there's an additional heal on top of the flat value as well. Keep in mind that the flat heal here isn't completely crazy, especially since the scaling on top of it also isn't high, but it can hit multiple targets, obviously, and it's relatively easy to confirm, like easier than, say, Arteo's multi-heal. The movement speed increase for allies or for himself is 20 to 40%. Also his only mobility ability. And I think they said something in the patch note about it lasting around 2 seconds, so it's not too crazy. Hysteria per hit here is 20, so also not the Hysteria stacking ability. Mana cost 75. Cooldown goes from 15 to 11 seconds. Another reason to consider maximizing this first. And then we have an ability called Wrap It Up. I guess that's the title. Burn Samedi throws his snake forward, wrapping any enemy guard hit and dealing damage every 0.5 seconds for 4 seconds, and slowing them until they're rooted. So this only hits guards, therefore I'm expecting it not to be maxed early on, but rather for late game. If an enemy guard is above 30 Hysteria, the snake will also lash out at nearby enemy guards who stand too close after 1 second. Enemies hit by this are injected with venom that slows them until they are rooted and deals the same damage but instantly rather than over 4 seconds. Damage per tick goes up from 10 to 42. Actually a decent amount of damage behind this ability still. And then plus 5% scaling. It has a total of 8 ticks, I think. So you'd still get 40% scaling out of this and decent amount of damage. Slow duration is 1.75 seconds. The root duration is 0.75 seconds. The hysteria per tick is 5, and that means in total it's 40 hysteria. So that's what I think this ability is primarily used for, especially because you don't even have to level it for this hysteria again. It's going to be what stacks hysteria on the enemy before you use your other abilities most of the time, as it goes up to 40. I'm not quite sure what would happen. As far as I understand it, if the target doesn't have 30 hysteria yet, the special effect will not happen with a secondary snake, basically. So, yeah. You can definitely use this, especially in a team fight. If you already have a target marked, you can throw the snake on them and then have the snake spread around to other targets. But primarily, this is probably going to be your stacking for the hysteria. And then, yeah, unfortunately, I don't have a cooldown here either, much like with the ultimate. Life of the party is his ultimate. Burn Samedi pulls the souls off the living towards his coffin, becoming CC immune and taking 50% reduced damage. Enemy guards within range are pulled towards the coffin and take damage every 0.33 seconds. Bit of an unusual take here. When an enemy guard gets too close to the coffin, their soul is ripped out, causing them to be stunned, take a large amount of damage based on their total health, and gain max hysteria. This ability persists for 3.5 seconds until an enemy guard is pulled to the coffin. If the target is being pulled are above 30 hysteria, the pull strength is increased on them. So this ability is interesting. 50% damage mitigation during the pull. Don't know why that was so necessary, but I guess because he's not really mobile. I think this could have easily been like a scaling damage mitigation. He is CC immune, and he can also move a fair bit. Raging Cries in the corner. But the ability is maybe not as crazy as it may sound. My initial thought was, wow, this basically makes Hades useless. The damage per tick is 17 to 45 plus 6% of your magical power. So significantly less than Hades. It ticks faster at 0.3 seconds, but versus Hades 0.5, but Hades will still most likely get more damage out of his ultimate. The damage on coffin hit is where the higher damage number is, which goes up from 140 to 420 plus 50% scaling. And it also does 15% of the target's total health as damage, so it also does a decent amount to tanks that way. Stun duration is 2 seconds, also a very long stun. And the Hysteria on this goes up to 8 Hysteria per tick, meaning you can basically, theoretically, fully stack Hysteria on an enemy team if everyone was there. Now, what's so important about this is that the ability ends the moment he pulls someone in front of his face. And what the high-risk employees were also talking about was that many times you will just have the tank jump in front of the others and take the pull for free and just take the stun and just, you know, cancel Samedi's ult very, very early that way. The damage isn't absolutely destroying you in the meantime, especially not a tank, and, well, that's his ult gone, basically. So Samedi has to position himself very well to try and pull targets that are weak through this without hitting the tank, and obviously he can still take damage at the same time. So while this has some similarities to Hades, especially in the way it pulls, he can re-aim it, and he can also intentionally try to not pull targets. Like, he can readjust the cone so that one target isn't pulled that was pulled before, and try to keep the duration up that way. But most of the time I expect this ability to be cancelled earlier than the full duration, and also deal less damage in the process and be more of a heavy stun, a heavy stacking for his passive as well, meaning that his other abilities will be more scary afterwards. And that's especially scary if he pulls multiple targets relatively close, one gets on max up Hysteria, and then he uses Wrap It Up, and then the snake spreads again because they can't get out quickly enough because somebody else is CCing. There's obviously also insanely good setup for any sort of AoE ult because he can control it himself, and if you play a double mage comp, then you can put a Poseidon Kraken in there, or you can drop a whatever Tyr ult on there, or Thanatos ult, or whatever you want. There's a lot of potential here for repositioning the enemies the way you want and really hitting them hard. Kind of think of Susanos 2, but much bigger and much better. And that's it for Samedi. I think Samedi is a very interesting kit. It's going to be hard to balance, I would think, because he has got so many unique effects across all his abilities, and he also has that potion, which is going to be very strong. And yeah, he's just somewhat complex, I would say, in his mechanics. I like that, but I also think that's going to be rough for a while, especially because he's also kind of a healer and a damage dealer at the same time. So that's a lot of things worth keeping in mind. He's got a lot of gimmicks, but I like that. I like that Hi-Risk is taking a more experimental route. This is God trying some new things again, and that overall should be good. And that brings us to the skins real quick here. Just gonna take a look at these and hope that these are in the correct way right now. We will have a new Hades skin here. We'll also have a new Baco skin, a very, very unique Baco skin, the Evil Spirits. And we'll have a new Nike skin, Superhero. The 5th American skin, I think by now, the 4th of July skin, plus we have the Redneck Bacos, Hoot and Holler. And we have some of these Gold and Legendary, etc. already, which look pretty cool. There's also already a teaser on Hi-Risk Ajax Twitter for the next Samedi skin that you get if you get the other 9 skins in the bundle system, in the chest system for the Tier 5 Bologna skin. We quickly listen to the voice packs here. If you're wearing your headphones, make sure to turn on the volume. This could be loud.
You know what's worse than the plague? Humanity itself.
Look at all these beating hearts. Little do they know, they will soon join the spirit world.
I embody bravery, justice, and freedom, and so can you.
Gotta say, the skins all look pretty cool this patch. I liked all of the designs in-game, though multiple of them actually were lagging during the presentation in jungle practice due to the effects on their abilities, and I really hope that's fixed before they get into the game. Miscellaneous. We've got new cosmetics. We got the Voodoo loading frame, Voodoo recall skin, and Voodoo global emote. We got new amounts of packs, Ramerica and Constable Moosejaw. We got additions to the awesome chest, Itty Bitty Bee, Arusen Cup, Elegant Nemesis, Orbital Scout, Artemis, Skytech Zeus, Dark Matter Capri, Godlike Chest gets additions as well, Kawaii Papa Stat, Fire Dance, Shibalanke, and Life's a Beach, Jab. My name is Jab. And Fantasy Point Store gets new additions too. Crocodile Sobek, Baywatch Kukulin, and Shaolin Monkey Horn. But keep in mind that especially Crocodile is a relatively hard to get skin if you don't have the codes and everything. So that's one worth keeping an eye on if you want that. We got a ton of audio fixes. I'm not going to go through all of them. A lot of ultimates, like Ra ultimates, Rare Tosca, and all that stuff are balanced out in volume, and a lot of announcer packs too, Tina, Ganesh, Sol, and Chak. So that's going to be very, very nice. The consistent sound level across the game will be much, much better, hopefully. Even some of them being adjusted as well, like Laughing Skull, Bakasura, almost like around the voice packs, not only the abilities. So very good. And then we have quite a few general changes. Fix an issue where hiding God stats would also hide Mastery Roman numeral. Fix an issue where the popular item tab would show evolved items instead of tier 3 items. Whatever. Fix an issue where stance changing guards passive meter cooldowns didn't match the ability bar cooldowns. Good. Added death, recap, cap, and recent damage icons to many damage sources that previously had no icon on those screens. Okay, a little less confusing. Fix an issue where old loading frames would display the FB for the wrong season. I know that Teats had some struggle with this one, so that's good that that's fixed. Fix an issue where players would get taken to a reconnect screen when logging in with the error message EULA declined. I don't know why that took so long, but I will. Spectator issues, we had a few of them being fixed. That's also very nice. I know that there's been a lot of complaints about that. And various fixes specifically for console where things didn't work out the way they should have. I'm just going to skip over this. You can read it if you want. And some fixes for Medusa's death match. Mostly just glitches that are fixed here. And that gets us to the items. Stone of Binding. This ability no longer stacks if multiple guards buy the item. Good. Makes sense. Most auras don't do that, so this one shouldn't either. Done. Evolved Height of the Urchin. Selling the evolved version of this item will now remove shield stacks from you. Good, makes sense. Done. I don't know why anyone sells that normally, but weird enough. Artemis. Fix an issue where pushing, grabbing enemy who was recently hit by an Artemis trap would cause them to be pulled quickly back to the trap. Good. Vulcan. Fix an issue where Vulcan's Inferno Cannon would be invisible on the Joust map while playing in Spanish or Portuguese language. I don't know how something like that happened. Apparently it was very hard to figure out that issue, but it's solved now. The Morrigan. Fix an issue where the Morrigan against items would not appear on the scoreboard when she used her ultimate ability. Shunqui. Fix an issue where Spasomita wasn't actually animating changes in soul stacks. There were a lot of glitches to Shunqui, but I'm not sure if they're fixed entirely. Not in here, but I think so, probably. Breastplate. I'm going to skip over the long description here. Increased cost from 500 to 600. The reason basically being that Guardians and Mages were too strong, as they could just build into Warrior's Blessing plus tier 1 Breastplate plus a Chalice of Healing. Now they will have to choose if they want the Breastplate or the Chalice. And Silver Breastplate increased from 950 to 1050 as a result, but the Nemean Lion, Breastplate of Valor, and Spectral Armor have their price decreased by 100, so they're not more expensive in the end, so it's more of an early stage nerf for Breastplate Rush. Understandable. I don't have a problem with this. They're trying to bring Warriors a bit back into solo lane, and that's okay after how the meta has shifted away from them. Another change in that regard as well being Gladiator's Shield. Increased physical power from 15 to 20. This item was focused on other things, more like the healing and the defense, and now it gets a little more power, and we'll see if that makes it more interesting again, more attractive again. More of Asclepius. I think a lot of people saw this one coming to some degree. Healers are just very popular at the moment, very potent at the moment, and especially Aphrodite and Ra apparently as well, so decrease health from 250 to 200 and decrease movement speed from 10% to 7%. The stats on the item are still pretty good, they always were, and it was kind of worth picking up even if you don't heal much, like it's worth picking up on Shunqui or stuff like that, so I can see where this nerf is coming from and I'm fine with it. Rough Healing also gets a small nerf, health from 150 to 100 and movement speed from 7% to 5%. The next nerf, I don't know why it was made without any compensation. Shaman's Ring, damage required to stack this item is now counted post-mitigation. That means before, if you had an ability that deals 200 damage to an enemy, and then they had how many protections, and the damage was reduced to 100, the stacks for this would still go up for the 200 damage you would deal before the mitigation, before the reduction happens. Now it will count for however many protections the enemy has. So if the ability that should deal 200 damage deals 100 after the protections, this will only stack for 100 now. And that's actually pretty crucial. Now, I can understand why it was done. This is for consistency. This is so, like, you see a number and it makes sense with your stacks. You see, I dealt 50 damage and I get stacks for 50 damage. So that part is logical. But at the same time, this is a very straightforward nerf. And there are, like, every guard in Smite has base protections. Most of the time, you will not get through the entire base protections. So every guard will reduce this damage a little bit. Tankier guards will reduce the damage even more. And that means that this item is just harder to stack, and I don't know why they didn't just lower the amount of damage you need to deal to stack it fully in the process of changing it. Because then it would make sense, right? Then it would be the same as before, because apparently the nerf, well, from what it sounds, the nerf was only done for consistency and not to nerf the item, which I don't think needs a nerf anyways. I think Shaman's Ring is in a pretty solid place. But in the process of creating this consistency, they've nerfed it and not compensated for it. And that I don't understand. I don't understand the logic here. Void Shield. Void Shield gets buffs. I understand that. It's just not really getting as popular as you would think it would be. It's just still second to Mystical Mail in many situations. It's still not valued by most solo laners over other defensive items, and so it gets buffs. A decreased cost from 2,700 to 2,600. Slight change. And increased health from 100 to 150. So a little bit of a push for Void Shield, absolutely understandable to me. It gives it a little bit more value. I still think it's not going to be the #1 physical defense item. Though, it might happen, who knows. But I think it's a good change that will bring it back more and make it more valuable for certain guards in specific situations, especially. Even for assassins. Guard balance. The most questionable guard balance in a long time. Muzzlecard. B's disability no longer disarms enemies. Okay. Hive. Increased attack speed buff from 10% to 30% to 10% to 40%. Okay. Increased movement speed buff from 5% to 25% to 10% to 30%. Why? I understand that AMC is not the meta guard at the moment, but AMC is a guard that, you know, through his lack of mobility, constantly shifts between the metas, bounces up and down. The B and B tier meme is long dead, and we've seen a lot of him in the last season, and most people didn't find it enjoyable that AMC was a very high tier pick in the meta, because he's incredibly hard to fight against, and when AMC is too strong, it's not like, if another guard gets too strong, then some people will do really well with him and others won't. With AMC, there are some people that consistently do well with AMC because they're so used to the guard and they play him very well. And others struggle with him a lot more because AMC is, well, relatively heavily positioning focused. You have to land a lot of basic attacks compared to some other guards. You have to know what you're doing with AMC. And buffing him again in various aspects around one of his core abilities that he can easily maximize early just makes me wonder, how long is it going to be until AMC is going to be a top ADC again and then has to get nerfed again? I would have seen one of these buffs, you know, but I don't think, for example, I especially don't think he needs like extra attack speed on top of what he has. 30% from a constant 30% attack speed increase was plenty. Most attacks, basic attack guards don't even have an attack speed steroid, and those who do normally have a temporary one. And here comes AMC with 5 hives he can place anywhere. So I don't even know how many hives he had at this point. 7, I don't know, whatever. 6. Don't see it. Next one, Aphrodite. Lovebirds increased magical power scaling of the heal from 15% per tick to 12.5% per tick, 90% total to 75% total. That's understandable, that's fine. Aphrodite was performing very, very well across all ranks everywhere. Sure, no problem. Apollo, across the sky, enemies hit by the last tick of the ultimate landing can be knocked up. Knockout is a straight up and low height. I understand that Apollo is not in the meta, but why are we bringing back one of the parts that was very annoying about his kit? Why don't we look at other options to buff him, make him less frustrating to play when he feels weak, and more interesting to play. And I don't know. I still think that Apollo's kit in itself is incredibly flawed between a global ultimate that can work in his favor, but has a long, weird wind-up and a weird way of dealing its damage, and also the fact that he's got an instant mess with protections on top, which I don't know. I don't think Apollo's kit should be the way it is. But putting back something that was very intentionally removed is weird. The knock-up is not the same as before, or the knock-back rather. Previously it used to knock back to the side of it apparently, and used to knock up longer, and now it just knocks up. I feel like it's actually gonna look weird, because the logic before is he drops down and somebody gets like knocked away when he drops down, and now he drops down and somebody flies up. I guess. I really don't see why this was the change that was to be made to Apollo at all. I feel like in situations where Apollo was good beforehand, or people that were playing him well beforehand in this meta will do better now, but anyone else won't care about this and will not suddenly play Apollo because of it. But oh well. Well, this one is actually depressing. The first part, I just don't know. I don't know who at high-risk plays this god. I don't know if they don't understand the god. Summon Suku. Increase strafe speed on Suku by changing hard cap on movement speed from 175 to 222. Updated the ability description to show that it's a speed cap and not a % reduction of speed. Who strafes on Suku? If you need to turn on Suku, you turn your camera and you move forward. You don't strafe. Like, sure, you strafe you strafe when you're bored and you're waiting in mid lane for the next wave to spawn or something. You strafe left and right, but you don't actually strafe. And if you do, you then read the description. You can run faster forward than normally, or you can be slowed down and strafe. Why would you strafe? Who cares about that being changed? Quality of life improvement. You know what would be a quality of life improvement for a village? Take the damn mana cost off Summon Suku and put it on the leap. That would be nice. That would be quality of life. That would help players with this particular ability. Instead, we get strafe speed. Nice. Gravity Surge. Decrease cooldown from 90 to 90, scaling down to 70 seconds. This is so that she's better in late game against comps that she's supposed to counter. Now, let's think about this for a moment. Who is gonna leap in late game against an Eweilish? Hunters? Assassins? Maybe if they're behind her so she doesn't see them. Mages, if they have a leap. It's gonna be warriors, and most of those are CC immune anyways when they leap. Or it's gonna be guardians who don't care about game pull. Like, this is only maybe for Odin, and even Odin doesn't really care if he's like, if it's a tank Odin, if he gets pulled in late game, he's like, thank you for putting me in the middle of your team. This doesn't matter much. It's a nice buff, but it's for late game. Like, a Eweilish in late game is just not a thing, and this buff is not going to change that. And then keep in mind that this is still not a low cooldown. This is a situational ability, and Ra has a shorter cooldown even after his nerf now for his ultimate, which he can just blow out at any point. And we will scroll down a little bit further here, and we'll see Osiris getting a flat reduction on his ultimate. That will be logical for a Eweilish, but Hyris is incredibly scared to buff a Eweilish early game because on the lowest of levels, she can pop stomp. Anyone past mid elo basically knows that you can just counter her with cripples incredibly hard, and that by good positioning, you will hardly ever get knocked up by her, so she needs a comp built around her. Unless you pick a full leap comp into her, or you don't know how to pick Ares or Artio, she's just not that much. Like, it's like constantly nerfing Anubis because in Bronx he pop stomps. Same kind of logic here, and it's a buff, but it's just not getting to the essence of the problems that the character has, and it's still not nearly close to where it should be in terms of cooldown reduction for an ability like that. And in high-risk TV, people still cried because at max CDR, this cooldown is lower. Oh boy. Well, a Willish. Moving on. Capri. Capri, still not very popular. So Fortitude, increased radius from 30 to 40. I think this was actually long overdue. It was always annoying how close you have to be to Capri to get the shield. And Abduct, Capri now gains 10 to 30 magical and physical protection while holding an enemy guard he hit with Abduct. I think that's really cool. I think that's a good feature. So he's a bit less punished for the fact that he can't really do anything while abducting either. So yeah, I like that. Good stuff. I would even say I'm not opposed to him being able to use other abilities during Abduct. Maybe minus his 3. If he could use his 2 and his ultimate during Abduct, I wouldn't mind personally. But that's just me. And then we have Osiris. Now Osiris, I think, needed a buff. He was not very popular at all, and Death Toll is gone, so he's not really meta anywhere. Sickle Strike increased base damage from 60 to 240 to 60 to 260. Just a little bit damage up the top. Not really going to do much, realistically. A lot of the Afterlife decreased cooldown from 90 seconds to 75 seconds. That's going to do more. The flat reduction here of a decent amount. Right off the top, 15 seconds. That's very good. You can enter him more, you can deal more damage with that. You can trade more through your fragments that you get. So, very good for Osiris. Not sure if it's enough to bring him back. We will see about that. Ra gets a nerf. Searing Pain decreased cooldown from 70 to 50 to 80 to 60. Again, still shorter than a Willis ultimate, so he'll be alright. He won't have much of a problem here. Though obviously you can't fire out as many Searing Pains just trying to hit someone randomly anymore. Well, I get that. Ra was good, so it's fair. Morrigan gets a bit of a buff. Confusion, increased movement speed from 20% to 40% to 30% to 40%. Just movement speed towards the bottom because she has a hard time rotating across the new map. And it's just generally not that favorable. I think the reason we don't see much of Morrigan is because everyone is too scared of the bugs anyways. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe she's actually playable at this point. Tyr. Tyr needed buffs, I agree. He wasn't trash, but he also didn't necessarily always perform the greatest. Wasn't a primary pick in solo for a long time now, so I understand him getting a buff. This buff, Fearless. Guard Sense of this ability now disarms enemy guards for 1.5 seconds. Guard Sense damage is now separate from Assault Stance. Guard Sense damage increased from 40 to 240 to 70 to 270. Just keep in mind that this on early ranks is a 30 damage increase. On level 1, where he can stand swap and double Fearless if he wants to, if you level that on level 2. I don't like that. I don't think that's good. You know, I know I'm known for not liking Tyr. And like I said, I agree he needed a buff. He wasn't there for a long time, but I don't think that this in any form is the buff that he needed. I know a lot of people are asking for a slow on the Fearless, and the disarm is more situational, I guess. Counters AA guards even more than before, which he already did. So he's just the ultimate AA counter now. But then also the damage increase, just out of nowhere. Weird. Chimpazilla, Dead of the Night, damage required to stack. This is now counted post mitigation. Same as Shaman's Ring. Just a buff bar icons to show difference between damage counter stacks and physical power buff stacks. Good. And then Darkest of Nights gets a increased cooldown from 90 seconds to 110 seconds. The nerf of both, I think, is understandable to most here. Chimpazilla is pretty strong at the moment, pretty good with the current damage and benefits that he has through his passive. So this is clearly, in this case, while also consistently, it is a nerf. Consistency is also a nerf, intended nerf, and I understand why it's done, and I can also understand why the ultimate is nerfed, because with Chimpazilla being more meta, you just see that too much, and it's a bit annoying. And that's it for this patch. Again, I think Samedi is great. I think it's an interesting character. As for the other changes this patch, I was sitting there and wondering. I was mildly confused. No, some of them I see, some of them make sense, but a lot of them I just don't understand, and I'm not too happy with. Oh well, with that, thank you guys very much for watching. If you're new to the channel, feel free to click the sub button with the bell. It really helps me out. Other than that, see you for the next one tomorrow. DukeSloth, out.